Somewhere on the outskirts of the Shibuya district in Tokyo, you'll find the Muto Dental Clinic. It's a small family business, owned by, as you might have guessed, the Muto family. The youngest member of this prestigious family was Azumi Muto, a 20-year-old who was born on June 13, 1986. She had two older brothers, the younger of whom was 21, named Yuki. In their family, everyone was involved in dentistry or other medical professions. In true Japanese tradition, the parents expected Azumi and her brothers to follow in their footsteps. They hoped that their children would eventually take over the management of the family clinic, and evidently, they wished for this tradition to continue with their future grandchildren. Azumi's older brother, whose name remains unknown, had already chosen to follow in the footsteps of their parents. He diligently studied and achieved high grades in university. This certainly filled their parents with pride, and if Azumi's younger brother and sister could have followed his example, they would have been overjoyed. However, their dreams were not destined to come true. Even in school, Yuki began to fall behind in his studies compared to his classmates. He couldn't achieve high enough grades to enter university or even aspire to complete high school. As for their daughter Azumi, dentistry never interested her, and she detested the fate her parents imposed on her. In Japan, the pressure to adhere to family traditions can be a heavy burden for children. It's a significant issue, and such expectations on young individuals are so widespread that they can seriously impact the mental health of the youth. Consequently, there are those who become reclusive, lacking any aspirations in life. As many may know, these individuals are referred to as hikikomori. This is also one of the reasons for the relatively high suicide rates in Japan, as people would rather die than feel ashamed in front of their family. If you think about it, it's indeed a sad reality that the country faces. However, Azumi had a strong character, and despite her parents insisting that she stay in the family business, she knew it wasn't for her. Therefore, after finishing high school, she started studying computer programming, and also aspired to become a model and actress, much to the dismay of her parents. The pressure from her parents was so intense that at the age of 18, Azumi left her home for several months to better focus on her new aspirations as an actress. This wasn't unexpected, as the family she grew up in was described as cold and unloving, and the pressure placed on these children by their parents often led to conflicts between generations. During this time, Azumi was involved in a low-budget adaptation of anime Lemon with Cream, film that received an 18+ rating and was considered highly explicit by Japanese standards. A few months after leaving her family, Azumi ran out of money and decided to return home. Reluctantly, her parents allowed her to continue studying programming and even permitted her to work as a model. Surprisingly, the family was just happy she had returned, except for her brother Yuki, who was not pleased with her presence. While Azumi was intelligent and succeeding in her chosen path away from family traditions, Yuki's ambitions went in the opposite direction. Not only did he want to pursue dentistry, but he also aimed to bring joy to his parents. Unfortunately, he couldn't continue his education. Since childhood, he was told that he would become an integral part of the family business and bring great benefit to the family, which of course put immense pressure on Yuki. His sister was smart enough to do what he could, but at the same time she turned away from family traditions. While he strove for his parents' approval, she simply didn't care. Azumi felt the hostility coming from Yuki and knew that he despised her. She confided in her friends, expressing that her brother scared her and exhibited strange behavior. Azumi often felt uneasy under his gaze, suspecting that his thoughts were never positive. A friend suggested that Yuki's feelings towards Azumi went beyond typical sibling relationships and were far worse. It was only an assumption, but it was evident that he sometimes spoke of her with disgust. In school, Yuki was considered quite strange. He had very few friends, mostly stayed home in his room. And despite this, his parents were unaware that their son was harboring a growing rage ready to burst forth. On December 30, 2006, the parents along with their eldest son went to Fukushima to visit relatives, leaving Azumi and Yuki at home. Azumi simply had no desire to go, while Yuki had a study camp planned for the New Year holidays. However, on the evening before their departure, Azumi, Yuki, and their mother had a regrettable argument, revolving around traditions and the perceived lack of progress in their lives. The atmosphere from that argument still lingered in the air, even after most family members left, leaving Azumi and Yuki alone in the house, both feeling upset. Japanese people are known to be reserved, often keeping their true thoughts and feelings to themselves. This is particularly true for women, but Azumi was not like other girls. She always spoke her mind, and this occasion was no exception. She still hadn't gotten over the argument from the previous evening, and entering her brother's room, she intended to address many of the things he had said to her. Yuki told his sister that he was ashamed of her and that she should no longer be a part of the family, which angered Azumi. When the argument quickly escalated again, she shouted that he would never achieve anything worthwhile, that he lacked ambition, and that he would end up with nothing. Unfortunately, this pushed him over the edge. In a fit of rage, he grabbed his wooden sword and began striking Azumi repeatedly in the face. As she resisted, Yuki's blows became stronger and stronger. He desperately wanted her to be silenced, no matter the cost. On January 3, 2007, the Muto family was ready to return home and resume their work after the New Year holiday, just in time as they began to worry. Throughout those days, Yuki had not been in contact with Azumi, and only before their arrival did their son send a message, warning them about an unpleasant smell. He explained that his fish had died shortly before he left for camp, and he hadn't had a chance to dispose of it, so he asked them not to enter his room. However, upon returning home, the stench was so overpowering that they simply couldn't ignore it. His grandfather Mamoru offered to go and remove the dead fish, but when he entered Yuki's room, he saw that the fish Yuki kept in his aquarium was alive. It was strange because there was definitely a smell coming from somewhere. Upon inspection, Mamoru discovered that the smell was coming from the closet. Upon opening the door, he noticed a pile of neatly stacked trash bags, and upon looking into one of them, he found flesh and a lot of blood. Shocked, Mamoru recoiled and immediately called the police. The body in the bag was identified as Azumi, and suspecting Yuki's involvement, the family waited for his return home before the police arrested him. When the news broke, tabloids erupted with speculation, claiming he was a necrophiliac and cannibal. However, the police ultimately refuted these claims, except for the gruesome details of the crime. Yuki almost immediately confessed to the authorities and shared horrifying details of his crime during the interrogation. After beating his sister with the sword, he grabbed a nearby towel and wrapped it around her neck. He strangled Azumi for a total of 3 minutes, counting from 1 to 180. To his horror, she was still breathing, so he dragged her to the bathroom and then drowned her. After a short break, Yuki cleaned up the crime scene and headed to the kitchen, where he took a knife and a saw and returned to the bathroom. There he took off his sister's clothes and began to dismember her body. Yuki cut off his sister's breasts and genitals, and then threw them into a waste shredder that was in the kitchen sink. He said it was done in order to hide her gender. After that, Yuki packed the rest of her body in garbage bags, which he kept in his closet and even in his sister's bedroom. As most Japanese bathrooms have a drain in the floor, Yuki was able to thoroughly clean the direction area by simply directing the shower spray at the walls and floor. Once satisfied with his cleanup, he packed his bags, filled with clothes and study material, and headed to the camp later that same day. Yuki's defense tried to prove that he was mentally incapable of realizing his crime and couldn't distinguish between good and evil. After examination by a psychiatrist, he was deemed mentally unstable at the time of murdering his sister. Experts argue that he had limited mental capacity before committing the crime, and during the moments when he mutilated her body, he was insane. Needless to say, his lawyer insisted that due to this he should not be held legally responsible for his actions. However, prosecutors rejected this plea, considering their animosity to be a strong enough motive for Azumi's murder. Thus, Yuki was charged with the murder and desecration of his sister's body. A little over a year later, in May 2008, Yuki Muto was found guilty. In total, he received just 8 years of imprisonment and was acquitted of the charge of body desecration on the grounds of mental disability. This is despite Yuki providing detailed accounts of what happened before his crime and demonstrating a clear memory of the murder, showing that he was fully aware of his actions. Fortunately, the Supreme Court of Tokyo deemed this a sufficient basis for overturning the initial verdict. They modified his guilty verdict to include charges of murder and desecration, increasing the sentence from 8 to 12 years, which in my opinion, still appears to be a relatively lenient sentence. During the trial, Yuki's parents sought out the best attorneys available, surprisingly for his defense, despite the heinous nature of his actions. Additionally, his parents shared details about how often Azumi would insult her brother and emphasized Yuki's quiet and kind nature. Despite the fact that their daughter was murdered and mutilated in her own home, they turned away from their daughter in court. What do you think about this story? Share your opinion in the comments and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this genre of videos, I recommend watching these videos. They also have captivating stories. And now, goodbye to everyone.